My sister slapped my daughter in front of everyone. Like mother, like daughter, both a disgrace, she laughed loudly. My father scoffed. She needs to learn what shame feels like. But they forgot one thing. They forgot that the entire professional film crew my sister had hired to polish her public image had all 12 microphones turned on. And what I did next turned her perfect brand into hell. Emily was frozen, her hand pressed against her bright red cheek. That sound, that sharp crack of a hand hitting a child, was still echoing in the hyper-modern minimalist room. My own daughter, my 6-year-old. I was frozen too, but only for a single second. And in that second, something inside me didn't break. It formed. It became cold and hard and perfectly terrifyingly clear. The panic I should have felt was replaced by a clinical calm, the kind I get at the hospital when a code is called. I crossed the room in 5 steps. I scooped my daughter up into my arms. Her little body was shaking, but she was silent, just staring at her aunt with wide, confused eyes. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I looked directly at Amanda. I looked at her branding team, at the videographers, who were still frozen, their cameras pointed at the floor. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, I said. My voice was low and it didn't shake, not even a little. Amanda scoffed, her public persona instantly re-engaging. Rachel, you wouldn't... I cut her off. Because all 12 of your professional-grade microphones are on. You just did that, on the record. Amanda's curated, public-facing smile didn't just drop. It shattered. You have to understand this moment. It was 30 years in the making. My sister Amanda was never just a sister. She was the brand, even as kids. She was curating her image, performing for our parents, while I was the too sensitive one. The problem. The one who felt too much and said too much. It's no surprise she became a tech ethics consultant, building a mid-6-figure brand by giving keynotes on building digital confidence in youth. And it's no surprise I became a pediatric nurse. She learned to manage optics. I learned to manage pain. So why was I even there? Why did I walk with my daughter into the lion's den? Because of Emily. She'd seen a picture of the rented Napa estate on the email invitation and called it a castle with the grapes. She had never met her cousins. She just wanted to go. And I like a fool. I lied to myself. I thought, maybe this time it'll be different. Maybe she's changed. Spoiler, she hadn't. The Anderson Family Vision Summit wasn't a family retreat. It was a PR stunt. A content creation weekend for Amanda's brand, complete with a hired branding team to film her authentic family interactions. The hierarchy was clear from the moment we pulled up. While Amanda and her venture capitalist husband Christopher held court my parents, Robert and Jennifer flanked them like royal guards. And where were we? Where were Jessica the nurse and Emily the 6-year-old? They gave us the guest room. It was a converted mud room. No windows, just a cot and the smell of old boots. At dinner, the first night, a long catered affair, under string lights, we were seated at the far, far end of the table. Next to the busing station, we were afterthoughts. Hired help, the audience, but not part of the show. I watched my father toast Amanda's latest keynote. I watched my mother laugh at Christopher's jokes. This wasn't a family. It was a performance. And my daughter, with her pure, happy song, had just ruined the take. The silence in that room was a new kind of loud. It was the sound of a brand shattering, of a carefully crafted narrative exploding. And then the scrambling. It wasn't, oh my God, what did you do? It wasn't, Emily, are you okay? No. The first person to speak was my father, Robert. He stood up folding his napkin and actually chuckled. Well, he said to the stunned videographers, discipline builds character, something Jessica never learned. My mother, Jennifer, chimed in, not even looking at me, but at Amanda. Oh, don't be dramatic, she said, waving her hand. It was just a tap. Jessica, you're ruining the weekend. You're always making a scene. I'm making a scene. Amanda, who had been pale, felt her audience return. Her parents. She instantly switched from panicked back to performer. She looked at her branding team, her voice dripping with that fake concerned tone she used in her keynotes. We're just trying to maintain a professional, focused environment, she said, as if I were the one who had failed a corporate review. Clearly, you don't understand the pressure of what we're building here. This is a vision summit. They were all in agreement. The slap was irrelevant. The interruption was the crime. The exposure was the sin. My daughter was still sobbing quietly into my neck. I looked at my father, at my mother, at the sister who had just assaulted my child. And I saw them for what they were. Not a family. A board of directors and I had just violated my contract. I didn't say another word. I didn't defend myself. I didn't engage. I turned my back on all of them, on the entire Vision Summit, and walked out of the room carrying my daughter. I went straight to the mudroom. I threw our clothes into our overnight bag. It took less than 3 minutes. Emily had stopped crying, but she was clutching her stuffed bunny, her cheeks still bright pink. I just kept whispering, "We're going home. We're going home now." I zipped the bag, and that's when there was a soft knock. I opened the door. It was Christopher, Amanda's husband, the venture capitalist. He looked pale. His eyes darted down the hallway back toward the great room and then to me. He didn't say much. He just reached into the pocket of his expensive linen jacket and held out a small black USB drive. I just stared at it. "This is the raw audio feed," he whispered. "Unmixed, from all 12 mics. The sound guy. He's loyal to me, not her." I was stunned. I didn't move. Why? He hesitated, and for a second I thought I saw a crack of genuine humanity. "Because that was my niece," he said, his voice low, "and because no one deserves that. Not on camera, not ever." I took the drive from his hand. It was still warm. It felt impossibly heavy, like a weapon. "Go," he said, stepping back. "Before she realizes." I nodded. I grabbed the bag, took Emily's hand, and walked out of that house. No one tried to stop us. As I passed the great room, I could hear Amanda's voice, loud and performative, trying to get the summit back on track. I buckled Emily into her car seat. I got in the driver's side. I didn't look back at the castle with the grapes. I just put the USB drive into the cup holder, and I drove. I didn't drive home. I couldn't. Home was where we were safe, and I felt like I was still carrying the blast shield from the explosion. I drove straight to Olivia's. Olivia isn't just my best friend. She's a corporate lawyer. She spends her days dismantling bad faith arguments from men who think they're smarter than her. She understands optics. She understands power. I sat on her sofa, the USB drive on the coffee table between us, and I told her everything. The slap, the laugh, the microphones, my father's smirk. She didn't interrupt. She just listened, her expression getting tighter and tighter. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. Then she stood up, walked to her desk, and pulled up her laptop. "I'm not pulling up a therapist, Jess," she said. She was pulling up LinkedIn. She turned the screen to me. It was Amanda's profile, a smiling, perfectly curated photo of her speaking at the Building Digital Confidence in Youth Summit. "Jess, You have to understand who Amanda is, Olivia said, her voice turning into the one she uses for depositions. She isn't a person. She's a brand. Her entire sense of self is built on public approval, mid-six-figure speaking fees, and that multi-million-dollar townhouse. She pointed to the screen. She doesn't have a private self. She's just a collection of keynotes, green room selfies, and carefully worded posts about vulnerability. When you send that audio file, you aren't just taking away her job. She looked me right in the eye. You're taking away her audience. And for her, that's not a setback. It's an execution. I felt a cold clarity click into place. Olivia was right. To fight Amanda in the family arena was to play her game, a game I'd been losing for 30 years. But to fight her in the professional arena, that was a different matter. The next morning I began. It wasn't a plan for revenge. It was a strategy. First, I took Emily to her pediatrician. I'm a pediatric nurse. I know the language. I didn't say, my sister hit her. I said, I need to document an injury for my daughter's records. The doctor, a kind woman I'd known for years, looked at Emily's cheek. The tiny red marks were fading, but they were there. She wrote it in the file. Faint hand-shaped contusion on the left cheek. She asked if I wanted to call the police. I said no. I just want it documented. Second, I took Emily to a child psychologist. This wasn't for the documentation. This was for my daughter. The psychologist, Dr. Harris, was gentle. She let Emily draw, and after a while she gently asked about the sad feelings Emily had. Emily, who hadn't really spoken about it, whispered, "My singing was bad." So she hit me. Then they all laughed. My stomach clenched. Dr. Harris looked at me, and her expression was tight. She asked Emily to play in a sand tray in the corner, and then she turned to me. "Jessica," she said, her voice low and kind, "I want to be clear. What you're describing is a classic narcissistic family system. For 30 years, they've used shame to keep you silent. Your sister's act was the system's final attempt to do the same to your daughter." I just knotted my throat tight. "Your decision to not be silent," she continued, "it isn't tearing a family apart. It's the first time anyone has ever held them accountable. You didn't just protect your daughter. You modeled liberation for her." Modeled liberation. I left that office with something I didn't even know I was looking for. It wasn't just evidence. It was permission. I went home. I sat at my small kitchen table, opened my laptop, and plugged in the USB drive. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I didn't need to. I found the timestamp, 10:04 a.m. I isolated the audio. It was 30 seconds long, 30 seconds of pure, unmixed, high-definition truth. You could hear it all. Emily's song rising in confidence, the scrape of Amanda's chair on the hardwood floor, the slap, it was shockingly loud, a sharp, clean sound. Emily's gasp, which was more of a choked sob. And then the voices. Amanda. Like mother, like daughter. Both an embarrassment. My father, Robert Discipline, builds character. Something you never learned. I saved the file. Exhibit A. Way. I opened a new document. I scanned the pediatrician's notes. Faint hand-shaped contusion. I saved that file too. This wasn't revenge. This was accounting. For 30 years, the books had been cooked, the numbers all wrong. I was just correcting the balance sheet. I drafted 3 emails. They were identical. Calm, professional, detached. To the board of directors, to the Mid-Atlantic Women in Tech Conference, to the managing partners of the VC firm. The subject line was simple. An ethical obligation regarding Amanda Anderson. The body was short. As someone deeply concerned with child safety and emotional well-being in leadership environments, I feel ethically obligated to share the attached files. An incident occurred at a family event which I believe is relevant to your organization's stated values. What you do with this information is, of course, your decision. I attached Exhibit A.wave. I attached the doctor's notes. I hit send on all three. 1, 2, 3. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel relief. I felt the quiet click of a lock falling into place. I felt balance. Then I went and made a cup of tea. The first call came 90 minutes later. An unknown number. Is this Jessica? The voice was a woman's, sharp and all business. This is Eleanor Bishop, board chair for the Tech Ethics Initiative. Yes, I said. A pause. We've received a deeply troubling report. We've reviewed the audio. Miss Anderson has been placed on indefinite administrative leave, effective immediately pending a full investigation. Thank you for letting me know, I said. No, the woman said, her voice dropping. Thank you for sending it, she hung up. 2 hours after that, an email from the conference. We are reconsidering Miss Anderson's suitability for our programming. Her profile will be removed from the speaker's page this afternoon. By 5 p.m., her entire professional biography, the one she'd spent a decade building, was gone from the venture capital firm's partners page. It was like she'd never existed. My phone, which had been silent all day, suddenly exploded. It was Amanda. What did you do? They're pulling everything? You're ruining my reputation. You are ruining my life. Then a text from my mother. You have torn this family apart. After everything we gave you, this is how you repay us. You are a vindictive, hateful child. Call us immediately. I read the texts. I felt nothing. It was just noise. Just the sound of a system that had found its equilibrium. I didn't respond. An hour later, the tone shifted. A new text from Amanda. The fury was gone. The desperation was pouring through. Jess, please call me. We can talk about this. I'll apologize to Emily. I'll do anything. Just call them back. Tell them you lied. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Please, Jess. They're pulling everything. Please. I read the text. Tell them you lied. Even now, the only solution was for me to absorb the lie, for me to take her sin and make it mine. I looked at the message at the please from the sister who had slapped my child and laughed. I took a breath. I pressed her name, and I hit block number. Then I did the same for my mother and my father. The house was quiet. My phone was silent. For the first time in my life, I had hung up on them, and I had been the one to do it. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number. Jessica, it's Christopher. Can we meet? I have something for Emily. Christopher, the one who gave me the USB drive, the one person who I thought had a conscience. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop, a neutral place. He was already there in a perfectly tailored suit, looking more like he was at a board meeting than a truce. He slid a new expensive-looking sketch pad and a set of professional colored pencils across the table. For Emily, he said. I heard she likes to draw. Thank you, I said, waiting. I knew this wasn't just about a sketch pad. He leaned back, sipping an espresso. I'm sorry you and Emily went through that, Jessica, he said. His eyes were perfectly still, cold, pragmatic. Amanda, She became a liability I could no longer afford. Her brand was built on an authenticity she never possessed. I looked at him. The ally who had saved me. The one good man who had given me the weapon. And the truth hit me, and it was colder than his espresso. You didn't give me that audio to save my daughter. I said, my voice just a quiet realization. You gave it to me to save your fund. He didn't denew it. He didn't even blink. It was a mutually beneficial severing of ties, he said, his voice flat. I'm filing for divorce. I knew this was coming, and I needed to get ahead of the scandal. I couldn't have her brand imploding while it was still attached to my new round of funding. You got your justice, he said, standing up. I got my damage control. He left. He hadn't just given me the USB drive. He had used me as a scalpel to surgically remove the cancer from his own life. The entire Anderson family, I realized, was just a collection of assets and liabilities. My phone, which had been so blessedly silent, started to chime again. But this time the names were different. A call from my cousin Sophia. I hadn't spoken to her in years. I picked up and she was crying. Jessica, she sobbed, I was 3 chairs away. I saw it all. I've been silent my whole life, just like you, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I said nothing. An email from my Uncle Michael. I've watched your father and sister manage their image for decades. I'm just glad someone finally stood up. I'm ashamed I wasn't one of them. The silent majority, the ones who had always towed the line, were finally admitting the facade was rotten. Their apologies didn't heal me, not really. But they were validation. They were the cracks in the foundation proving the rot went all the way down. And then one last call from a blocked number. I knew who it was. I picked up. You've torn this family apart. It was my mother's voice, her tone like venom. After everything we gave you, this is how you repay us. You've destroyed your sister. You've destroyed us. I listened. I heard the accusations. I heard the gaslighting. I heard the desperate clawing attempt to pull me back into the role of the problem, the scapegoat, the one who was too sensitive. And for the first time in my 32 years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt clear. No, Mom, I said, and my voice was calm and strong. I didn't tear it apart. I just refused to keep taping it back together for you. I hung up. 6 weeks later, my apartment was full. It wasn't the Anderson Family Vision Summit. There were no videographers, no branding teams, no caterers serving food I couldn't pronounce. It was just my apartment. Small, a little cluttered, and warm. Olivia was there opening a bottle of wine in the kitchen. My cousin Sophia was sitting on the floor with Emily helping her draw. She had driven 3 hours to be there. Even Dr. Harris, the child psychologist, had stopped by for 10 minutes on her way home, just to give me a hug and say, "You're doing everything right." This was my new legacy. It wasn't a brand. It was a community. It wasn't built on optics. It was built on showing up. We were in the middle of eating pizza off paper plates when Emily, who had been quietly drawing, got up and walked over to me. She tugged on my sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, her voice small. "What's up, baby?" Can I sing? Now?" My heart stopped. It wasn't just fear. It was awe. I knelt down to her level. The room hadn't gone quiet, not yet. "You never have to ask baby," I said, my voice thick. "But you only have to, if you want to." She nodded, her eyes serious. "I want to. I practiced." She walked into the middle of our living room rug. It wasn't a stage. It was just a rug. But she stood on it like it was. Olivia saw her and put her wine glass down. Sophia stopped drawing. The room went quiet. Emily took a deep breath, and she began to sing. It wasn't a cartoon theme song. It was new, something she'd made up herself. It was a gentle, soft melody about stars, about how the stars still shine, even when the clouds try to hide them. Her voice was soft at first, a little shaky. Then it got stronger, clearer. It was perfectly, achingly on key. She closed her eyes and she just sang. She sang about not being afraid of the dark, because the dark is just a blanket for the light. I was crying. Not sad tears, not angry tears, just tears. I was witnessing healing in real time in 6-year-old form, the arc of pain to power right there on my living room rug. When she finished on a clear high note, there was a second of silence. And then everyone clapped. Olivia had tears running down her face. Sophia was openly sobbing. Dr. Harris, who had been lingering by the door, just smiled, the proudest smile I'd ever seen. I knelt down and Emily ran into my arms, hugging me tight. I buried my face in her hair. "You have," I whispered, the bravest voice I have ever heard. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I was sitting on the couch. The apartment was quiet, filled with the comfortable mess of a good party. Empty pizza boxes, a few wine glasses, and Emily's drawing of the stars, which she'd taped to the wall. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. A new number. A message from Amanda. Just 2 words. "You win." I stared at it. I thought about the Napa estate, the microphones, the slap, the cold, calculating eyes of Christopher, the desperate texts from my mother. You win. She still thought this was a game. She still thought we were playing by her rules. This was never about winning. It was about breaking a cycle that had kept the women in my family small and silent for generations. It was about making sure the poison that ran through their veins stopped with me. I looked at the text one last time. Then I deleted it. I deleted the contact, and I blocked the number. For the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never been allowed to feel. I felt peace. Breaking a cycle is the hardest thing you can do, but it's the only way to heal. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that their voice matters and that the truth is always, always louder than the brand.